Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Interesting write-up on how complicated manufacturing is on a global scale. This is very sort of Leonard Reed I-pencil-ish. J.D. Vance, was at that Nucor steel plant in South Carolina last week. That's where he sat down with Brett Baer.
Yeah.
Nucor loves the tariffs that Trump imposed on its competition from imported steel, but doesn't like some of the other tariffs. The company warned about ways that Trump's global tariffs will increase its cost for both equipment and raw materials, specifically pig iron and direct reduced iron, or DRI. Pig iron imports last year were 4.7 million metric tons, much of it from Brazil. DRI imports were 1.5 million tons, almost all from Trinidad, where it's produced by a Nucor subsidiary. Whether it was President Biden or currently President Trump, are we working to make sure that the administration has the right information, the right understanding of the impacts related to this industry? Absolutely. We're doing that every day. Right. I mean, this is what this begets. Tariff protections for me, but not for thee. Government as a sword for me, or a shield for me, but not for thee. Government in the business of picking winners and losers, to borrow a cliche. And even with an industry, with a specific business, I should say, that is both a winner and a loser. Is that the sort of central planning that gets America to a better place? Not if this stays the way that it is. If, as I've said from the outset, somehow in some way, starting perhaps today with Mark Carney, Canada's new PM, you get to a general agreement to categorically lower trade barriers on both sides of a bilateral agreement or all sides of a multilateral agreement. That's one thing. But picking and choosing leaves one in a very confused state. You're trying to figure out if Nucor may be trying to figure out right now if they're a net beneficiary or a net casualty. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by John Tamny, editor of RealClearMarkets.com, also the author of The Money Confusion, How Illiteracy About Currencies and Inflation Sets the Stage for the Crypto Revolution. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What is your sort of level of concern about the uncertainty of this environment when it comes to trade policy?
My goal always is zero for everyone. I don't want to be just over the top, oh my gosh, he's ruining the country. And the reason I won't say that is because we're a market. We're a voting market, and we correct mistakes. If Trump continues on this path of imposing tariffs and the Republicans don't block him because they're afraid of what if he'll primary them, the reality is those same Republicans, many of them will lose seats, and Democrats will take back control, and we'll have gridlock, and Trump's ability to do more damage will be limited. So I think this solves itself either way. But, anytime you get in the way of we have evolved as a species working together. That's why there's so much plenty in the world, because we divide up work. When you put up barriers to that, when you tax it, you naturally slow down economic growth and prosperity.
What about tariffs on movies, so that next time Paddington wants to go to Peru, he thinks twice about going to Peru?
Yeah, I mean, it's just anything like that. I'm one of these people. People say, "Oh, how effete," but I love foreign movies. I want them made at different places. I've always felt that the fact that they make a lot of movies in Georgia was something that supported our point of view. Ben Affleck, someone who historically had said, well, I want higher taxes, I make a lot of money. But he said, I quote him in my books, he specifically said, if you get tax breaks, you have that much more time to spend making a movie. You can put that much more effort into it, that much more money into it. And so the fact that movies are made everywhere supports the idea that taxes are a price. We should use this to bring taxes down, not to bring them up.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, quote unquote, American movies have, overseas shoots and saying what constitutes it. And then you get into this, never ending minutia that feeds the central planner and nobody else in particular. I mean, and that, the
well,
Hollywood
how are you going to
thing.
enforce it too?
Well, I mean, first, right. So we're providing tax benefits to a particular industry on the one hand, which is also industrial policy, whether it's in Chicago or Georgia or anywhere else that provides tax incentives for movie production. And then on the other hand, we're insulating some of them from competition, and also we're punishing some of them for competing. I mean, this is the meatball sundae you get with this sort of policy making.
Yeah, and it's endless. What did Engel say? He said tariffs are the endless screw. Once you bail out someone with a tariff, you're hurting someone else, which means you have to bail out them. It's just something that's never ending. And so the goal always should be, why do we work? We work in order to get things. And so you want the whole world competing to serve your needs. But also when the world's competing to serve your needs, guess what? That enhances the odds of you getting to do the work most associated with your unique skills and intelligence. No one is harmed by trade. And this is where I get frustrated with so many on our side. So many who support no tariffs will say, yeah, but China did take a lot of jobs. No, they didn't. The biggest job destroyers in the United States are U.S. producers, and that's called progress.
Well, right. I mean, what you've actually seen, if you look at some of the longitudinal charts, is there are definitely fewer people working in the manufacturing sector, at least according to the Fed data that I was looking at the other day. Maybe it's dropped by 600,000 or 800,000 over the last 25 years, which is not inconsequential. But then the flip side is you look at output from that same sector, and it's gone up at a 45-degree angle. So a lot of this, and the sort of the underappreciated story that I think you're pointing to, is you have fewer people in manufacturing and a more efficient and productive manufacturing sector through innovation.
Well, yes, and I'm pointing to that. No doubt you can. This is what happens. You can do more with less, but let's remember, Americans hated manufacturing jobs. People who want manufacturing jobs are the ones that are most innocent of them. What destroys cities? You want to destroy a city? Bring lots of factories to them because that repels talent. The biggest manufacturing cities in the United States 100 years is New York City. Flint and Milwaukee were 2 and 3. Los Angeles is number 4. What are the two most prosperous cities of those 4 today? They are New York and Los Angeles. And why are they? Because they left the past behind. And when you leave the past behind, when you allow people to evolve, talented people come to where you are. There are lots of Flint and Milwaukee people living in New York and Los Angeles. There are very few to probably none New York and in Los Angeles people living in Flint and Milwaukee. People don't want those jobs. They've never wanted those jobs.
Well, and even in the more advanced and high-tech manufacturing businesses where you have good-paying jobs, and there are people that are interested in them, or could be if you reoriented their sort of cultural understanding a bit, and their understanding of the value of a college education and so forth, sort of the Mike Rowe conversation. You have those manufacturers that can't find people to fill some of the jobs that they have.
Well, of course you can't. There's a great book called Playing Through the Whistle by S.L. Price. It's about football in Aliquippa, PA. And the parents who worked in the mills and factories, they were adamant. They said, do something for yourself. We are working these jobs so that you don't have to, as in they told their kids to get out and get out quickly. These were good jobs 100 years ago. They're not good jobs now, and that's why the fact
that's why Mike Ditka left and became a tight end for the Bears. Right.
It's exactly why. I mean, that was why did he go to Pitt over Penn State? Pitt had a better dental program. He was getting out. His parents lived in that world. He wanted out.
So now I don't want to be all Debbie Downer on this because a lot of Trump supporters want to give him some bandwidth and see if this asymmetrical approach works. And Larry Kudlow said, last week in reaction to the minor hysteria about the first quarter GDP number. Look, what you have here is, there was some, front running the imposition of tariffs, but there was also front running the expectation that we're going to see an extension of the tax relief from Trump's first term, that we're going to see some spending restraint. And so he's pretty sanguine about economic growth and economic vitality in this country in the coming quarters. Are you similarly optimistic?
Oh, I'm always optimistic. Americans are pretty smart, and they always work around the mistakes of politicians. The GDP number was nonsensical, and that's not a defense or support of Trump. GDP is a ridiculous number. When you have a huge inflow of imports, which by definition is matched by exports, but people don't realize that. Of course, that's going to bring GDP down. And so people, as you alluded, they rushed a lot of things in to beat the tariffs, and so that brought the number down. But imports are always a bullish sign. There was a brief decline in government spending. I assume it's related to Doge. And so that, of course, brings GDP down. But what does that tell you? That's just a reminder that GDP is a monument to double counting.
Yeah.
Government spending can't drive economic growth because government spending is an effective economic growth. Governments have money to spend because Americans are productive. And so the idea that more government waste would increase the number just shows you how foolish the number is. So to focus on GDP, utter waste of time. But over time, if these tariffs have teeth, if Trump actually goes through with this, of course it's going to slow down economic growth. The reality is the Chinese sell to us because they want to buy from us. China is a massive market for U.S. production. If we put up barriers to each other, we'll be buying less from each other, and so we'll be selling less to each other.
There's sort of a tell from Scott Bessent last week, Treasury Secretary, when he was talking. I think it was maybe it was Bartiromo, I can't remember, or maybe it was just the press briefing he had. But regardless, he said, "Look, we're not trying to be the world's largest producer of dog collars." He basically insinuating we're looking for particular, to protect or onshore particular industries or particular product lines within industries, and that's all well and good. But it concedes the point that comparative advantage is a real thing. It concedes the point that free trade orientation, at least working in that direction. I'm not naive about how close we'll get, but it concedes the underlying premise of the free trader when you say we're not looking for this, we're looking for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just wish they weren't looking for that either. But let's agree that politics is the art of the possible. Trade has been politicized for as long as we've existed, and it'll be politicized long after we've existed. I think I speak for all of us right now that if we were negotiating, we would say we are going to zero. If you don't follow us, you're going to fall even further behind us economically. Because that's the argument that the Trump supporters are making. They're saying, actually, he wants to be at 0, too. This is his way of getting there. I just wouldn't do it this way. It's mistaken. Just because the rest of the world has higher tariffs on American production, that means they're injuring their people. That means they're slowing their people's economic evolution. I don't see why Americans have to suffer because other countries harm their people.
The other area of concern is on the spending side. Trump's sort of budget framework as direction to Republicans on the Hill had about $163 billion in spending reductions and discretionary spending, which, of course, discretionary spending now only represents about a quarter of the federal spend on an annualized basis, which is a whole nother hornet's nest. But and you have recalcitrant Republicans. Some Republicans in the House want to keep the green subsidies because it benefits their districts. And Josh Hawley is now reversing course on any sort of Medicaid reform because it's potentially politically problematic. He believes. I mean, it has nothing to do with the economics or the sense of the program. It's just straight, political calculations or the amount of political capital you want to have to spend to address what will be the agitprop from the other side. So, I mean, that's a real practical problem, too, is you have a lot of lazy and big spending-oriented Republicans on the Hill with pretty small majorities in both chambers.
Well, yeah, it speaks to what Ronald Reagan ran into. Ronald Reagan wanted to shrink government, but what he found is that every government program has a constituency, and it's got Republican constituents, and so it's very hard to do. At risk of talking my book, I'll talk my next one. It's titled The Deficit Delusion, and one of the chapters makes clear the worst thing we could do in terms of limiting government would be to cut spending or to pursue entitlement reform, and you just explained why. Any money that's saved, they don't burn it up. They don't give it back. It just frees it up for other dumb ideas, the dumb ideas that gradually develop constituencies. So you even now have Republicans who a couple of years ago said, oh, no green spending. Even now they want to keep it because some of it takes place in their district. And so at some point, hopefully people will get the reality that if you want to shrink government, you've got to shrink revenue. You don't shrink it with spending cuts because that just gives them money to throw at other bad ideas that grow and grow and grow.
John Tamny, editor of RealClearMarkets.com, author of The Money Confusion, How Illiteracy About Currencies and Inflation Sets the Stage for the Crypto Revolution, and your forthcoming book. It is entitled, what again?
The Deficit Delusion, Why Everything Left, Right, and Supply Side Tell You About the National Debt is Wrong.
John Tamny, thank you as always.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Attention! If you owe money to the IRS, this is an urgent message. The IRS is cracking down by sending out collection letters,